Okay, coming to the IAM roles, we'll see what are the different roles that we have it here. Very similar to users, which is a like normal user group that you can talk about, and AWS identifies with permission policies that determine the access to available to the identity. So a specific set of services that you can give access to specific users based on the roles. I mean, we have seen a couple of roles like, admin, user, normal user, all that stuff, right, while creating the role, so that we can assign it to the different users, and not password protected and do not requires access key. So a couple of users, you don't even, I mean, either you can choose them as a password protected user, or you can even not to give any kind of a password for them to log into the application. So in certain cases, when you create user, it's not always like, the physical user, what I told you, right? So a couple of them would be your services which would be monitoring your health of the cloud services which are hosted in the cloud. So those kind of a users doesn't require any kind of a access key or the password protected. You can create the normal user without any protection to those users, which will be acted 24/7 with a not too much critical data that they would be doing it. So they would be kind of a service which is running at the back end, those kind of a users assumed by anyone who requires them. So like we can even decide to whom and all we can give IAM roles. Uh, if we have seen the IAM roles user section, so it's all your super admin discussion that what kind of users that you wanted in the system, and give role-based authentication accordingly. And coming to the various functions of roles, and we'll talk about as we have seen, like we have to have create the users, provide access to the users, and even when you host some applications into the cloud, you need to give how like we have to give uh, role-based authentication to those clouds, applications. And there are a couple of services which are being uh, hosted, and you need to know whether you have to every application in the cloud can access those services, or do we need to have any kind of permissions that we talked about as per the previous slide. So if you talk about in your AWS account, the first step here would be you would be admin creates and grants a couple of you access to those users. And what he does, so it's the first step when he get the instance profile with the role, it will take that picture and store it into the S3 bucket. So, or whatever the user is having kind of a permissions, which will be captured and stored it here. And the second step here would be like a developer launching on instances, whatever the kind of role that you are intended to give it to that user, you can assign it to that particular user. And the third step here would be application retrieves role credentials and the infrastructure instances. So as I mentioned, you can give access to the applications based on the role that you are giving it. So let's say if this user wanted to have access to this application, they'll go to this application section and see if they can have access to those applications or not, and all that can be configured. And once you have the application access, and that will take all the photos of that particular instances and store everything into the S3 bucket. So you will have all the details captured in your S3 bucket whenever you wanted to see. This is one of the feature which we talked about earlier also, right? It will take the image of that particular state and put it into S3 bucket. You can go back to any state in the previous period, and can see that what is being tracked, or what is being accessed by the user. Okay, so these are the functions of that particular user. So coming to the next one, demonstrate how to create a IAM role. I think this also we covered IAM role creation before we go and create the user. So going to the next slide, we are again at knowledge check area. So here, how do you assign permissions to IAM user, group, or a role? So Patrick, can you take this question, please?
I will go with C.
Okay, C is the correct answer using a policy document, right? Yeah, C is the correct answer. Okay, coming to the next slide here, IAM best practices, overview of the IAM best practices. So we'll go to the next slide to see what are the best practices that we can follow. Okay, uh, so a few points are, as a checklist, we need to always remember these best practices while creating any user. So you need to have unique credentials for everyone instead of, having multiple credentials or the different credentials for the user. But I'll tell you where you can segregate, the unique credentials for everyone and while giving it, because you cannot have the same credentials for everyone, right? So unique credentials for everyone as a basic level, and control permissions at an individual level. So again, as I mentioned here, the permissions at every individual level, you can even control the permissions based on the policies that you are going to assign it to that particular user. So the policies are the one which will come into the picture when you are wanted to give specific, control permissions at individual level. Okay, and easier to rotate credentials, which is like you can, if you have the credentials given to the set of users, you can change the credentials, like when it will get expired and the policy, the expiration policy timelines, right? So that periodically you can do it at one shot. So you no need to have, I mean, you should not have any shared accounts. Let's say your analytics team and your maybe production deployment team should not be having the same account, because both are having those accounts for the different separate purpose. So we shouldn't be giving sharing the accounts between two different departments or sections. Okay, so that's one thing key thumb rule that we have to remember. And everyone to identify security breaches. Sorry, easier to identify security breaches. So we have a couple of, if you know that, there is a security breach happens, you can definitely look and see that which are the users having the, uh, affected because of this security breach. That particular users group only you can look into it easily, and you need to give extra policies or additional set of security policies to mitigate the breaches, security breaches. So it's easy if you have multiple you know users, while giving while giving the similar kind of access to multiple users, you will not be in a position to segregate which user is causing these security breaches. So you need to have easier when you have the IAM users. Okay, so the one more thumb rule is, grant least privileges. What it means, you should not be, when you're creating IAM policies and granting, privileges, you need to like grant only the required one. So let's say if user is required access to the HR information, right? Only you need to give access to the HR information. You are not supposed to give the additional access which is not being required for that particular user. So it should be you should be very specific in providing that information. And if you are limiting or giving the only specific permissions to that user, it's easy to track, or there is no way that your user would be what do you call, like not doing anything with the data, which he is not supposed to do anything with that data, right? Let's say if people from HR department will have all the specific information of the employee and all the salary information, which is very much critical, or not to be revealed to the other groups in the organization. So they have separate specific set of permissions would be given to them, but rest of them will not have any kind of access to those kind of data which is there in the cloud. and you should when you keep it everything in the cloud, there should be, I mean, it's easier to revoke any kind of permissions, because you'll I mean, you go to the user section and remove the permissions. You'll not required to go to the users which are there added to that IAM group. Only to the IAM group, if you remove that permissions, all the users within that group who have been added will get revoked from that particular I mean access. And coming to the next one, you protect your assets. Yes, so with all these kind of a security measures that you're doing with your by providing the least privileges, so you will have very less risk of uh, uh, protecting all your assets, which is one of the good thing in the cloud environment. You can have a specific set of access only to the IAM groups. Okay, moving to the next slide here. Manage permissions with groups. So we even talked about this one earlier also. It's like, when you wanted to give permission to that group, people who are being added into that group will get a, you'll have many individual users, right? So many users will be added to that particular one. So which means you don't need to give access to each and every user, right? So you need to manage only that group, so that all the users who are tagged to that particular group will get that privilege or the access. So which is one of the easiest way to maintain. And simple to reassign permissions. So okay, so let's say if you to the group you are given a normal user level, so he's an IAM user, so but you wanted to give reassign the permissions to that particular group, so that easy to revoke that existing one, add another permissions to that group, so all the users in that group will get that access without any interruption. Yeah, so it's easy to manage all this by the administrator. Okay, the next slide, restrict access with further conditions. So yeah, we talked about couple of things earlier also. Let's say like we have users, they would be coming to cloud using multi-factor authentication, and you have IP addresses for the system. Let's say this is a Windows system, or like in this system you have like HR information. In this system you have I mean, let's say the analytics team information, or in this you have some customer information, right? So those systems, what are the information that you have deployed will be, you'll call it based on the IP addresses. These are the like virtual private cloud systems, the instances which we have created in the application. Based on the IP addresses only, we'll identify which system is for what purpose, right? So uh, here again, in the production server you have the security group, and you can have further access restrictions. Let's say if you're coming to this IP system, any user is accessing this particular IP system, this also we can configure in terms of like not every user can access this HR information, or not every user can access the client information. So all that further access can be given to it. This is your production box, which is your where you can have a different set of security groups, well, I mean, create, and you can uh, maintain I mean, the super user will be able to maintain this end-to-end environment. Okay, coming to the monitor activity in your AWS account, this also we have talked about some time before, like we have logs information, and CloudTrail is the one which will be taking your system pictures for a different set of instances, every stage of instance, and store that information into your CloudTrail. And logs also will have the information of the activities that user would be doing in the cloud environment. Okay. Okay, this also we have gone through, like create a strong password policy. You need to follow certain rules while creating the password, while creating the user, right? It will show up all this information when your password is complying with all the things which are given here, then only you'll be able to have the password for your uh, like your email ID and the password when you are creating the first time. Okay, so you need to go through these things. And user roles for applications that run on EC2. Okay, so we have seen this, IAM roles remove that need to be, for any kind of developers. We will be storing that information into the AWS EC2, which is AWS cloud computing, right? Elastic Cloud Computing. So in the AWS account, first you are coming here and creating all 1 second, 1 second. Yeah, coming to this use roles for application that run on EC2. This is also similar set of cycle only will it follow to to create pass credentials on EC2 instance when you are logging into this application with any IAM user or normal super user. It will follow all this, admin creates the user and it will go to the, understand what, I mean, it takes a picture and put into your S3 bucket. And again, it will go to the EC2 instance and see whatever the application which has been hosted here. And it launches everything into your cloud. And from there, it retrieves the role-based credentials. So whether the user who is logged into the application has access to whether he is having access to access this application or not. So once they have, then only they'll access the application into the cloud. And once they access that cloud, again, app will take that all that pictures and put into the S3 bucket and see, I mean, store that particular set of information that so once a user has been accessed your cloud environment and stored all that information into your S3 bucket with the photographs. Okay. Okay. So reduce or remove unnecessary credentials. So this is when it comes to the real projects, right? I have seen in a couple of projects where we need to maintain like 300 to 400 users. 300 to 400 users with a different set of roles, and periodically we need to understand if any new user has been come in. But sometimes what happens, they don't revoke the access to the users who has been moved out of that particular group or from the organization, which is kind of I mean, not needed information we been still available in the cloud, which is the user who doesn't require access to that particular instance, they will still have access to that cloud if he is still being moved out of the organization and all that. So this kind of regular maintenance activity, generally people who are doing the production support and when they're maintaining it, so they do it as a regular practice to see if any user doesn't require access to it, if somebody moved out of the organization or from the group. So uh, they revisit all that things periodically, and they revoke the access. And I have seen in a couple of accounts in the previous projects and organizations, they are still paying for those users. They're the corporate users. The corporate information is getting, I mean, they're paying to that corporate account to the cloud, which is not required, right? So they're wasting the money over there. So these kind of miscellaneous things or maintenance things that they, like every company has to do it in a regular periodical manner, and also notify the higher management about the costing when they are managing some cloud environment. Okay, coming to the AWS security token services. So this one also we have touched upon yesterday. What it does is like a web service that enables you to request a temporary and limited privilege credentials for AWS identity and access management users that you authenticate. So this STS service, like a token service, will take that users and uh, do the initial kind of uh, credentials check and then allow the users to log into the cloud. Okay, coming to the next slide here. AWS Security Token Services, STS, again, if you see here the process flow or the diagram here, the federation allows you to combine users across domains, and then next it will go and the identity broker allow you to federate identity point A and point A to point B. And the next section here is identifies users as a service such as users to like users of LinkedIn or Amazon. And then fourth one is identity store, like is it services like LinkedIn, Google, or Active Directory. So generally we have seen in the previous slides, we can even connect to the social networking sites and also Gmails, Facebook, and LinkedIn, right? So in this cycle, what it does when it come connect to that particular services, it flows to this particular service flow, and they identify like using these brokers, they connect to the point A to point B, which is you're coming into the system and reaching into the point B section, but it identifies whether you're coming from LinkedIn or from Amazon or from the Google or whatever the service. And you in the fourth identity store that they identify what is that service that is being requested for, like whether it is LinkedIn or Google or any Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory. This is the flow of the security token service, which generally will look at here. Okay, this is a follow-up on that as a flow diagram. In your organization, your identity. This is the identity provider, and the first the request will coming from the client app application side. So it will come to the portal or IDP, your identity like identity provider or whatever it is. Yeah, so when it comes to this particular section here, identity portal and identity provider, it knows like to authenticate. So it will take you to the authentication service, which is your LDAP. So generally, every organization will do that authentication based on the LDAP based identification system, right? So they identify whether the user who is requesting that information is a valid user or not, right? So once that is done, it will come here again, and it gives that information back to IDP saying that okay, this person is a genuine person from the organization who had requested the information. So it comes
Sure.
here.